Hey guys, thank you for tuning in to Jay Slay Made in the USA, where we explore truth, expose deception, and inspire courage. You know, guys, I run this program for men, and we're always talking about what can we do as strong men who want to be strong, at least, to make a difference. And as we look out, at the forces arrayed against us at a national level, or what you see on mainstream news or what have you, it becomes very difficult sometimes, and you can get black pilled, and you're like, man, what can I even do about this stuff? Whether it be the national debt, open borders, the attack on family, all these different things going on that are so obvious. And what we typically come back to is, well, we're in the perfect country to make a difference locally. And I kind of had to take an inward look on that and I've realized I'm not really as engaged as I should be on a local level. So with that in mind, I've got a guest on today. He's a return guest to the show, who really has dove in since moving here a few years back from Texas. Started Tennessee Stands and is very involved, ran for state Senate and just barely lost that battle last fall. But Gary Humble is a man that I respect very much. He brings the news through Tennessee Stands often on his Rumble channel, on his website, on his Instagram. So you can go to Tennessee Stands and get caught up on all the local stuff. But with that being said, Gary, I'd love to get the Tennessee update, and thanks for coming on, man.
Yeah, thanks for having me on, Jeremy. It's great to be a return guest. So I didn't get blacklisted, so that's good.
No, you're not blacklisted, man. You're welcome back. I hope to have you on more. At a 10,000 foot level, this is something I've been wanting to ask you. Anytime there's a leak of audio or a backroom deal that kind of we find out about, whether that involves the set, like a Jack Johnson or a Bill Lee, and it's like, okay, now we know what they're saying behind closed doors. It always seems to be something that's going against the will of the majority of the people, whether you're talking about a gay pride parade or red flag laws. I mean, there's that famous audio clip now of Jack Johnson saying, don't say red flag because that'll turn people off. Here's how we're going to get this thing done, though. It's like they're coming up with ideas to go against the will of the people. And in my mind, I'm thinking, if you want support, if you want power, if you want the love of your constituents, do what the people want. Like, that should be easy, but it seems to be going in the other direction. Can you kind of give me a thematic description of why that may be?
Well, I think the best answer to that recently, this last week on the Freedom Matters podcast, which I really enjoy getting to co-host with my friend Kevin Kukaji, we interviewed Andy Roth out of D.C., who is the executive director of the State Freedom Caucus Network. And I think he gave what's a really perfect answer to that question. And he said, I really don't believe that what we're seeing in the political sphere today is a competition between Republicans and Democrats. It's really the Uniparty versus conservative Americans. And the way he described it is that he really sees the left, the Democrat Party, and the establishment Republicans, his words, kind of the more moderate vein of the party, working together. I mean, that really essentially is a party that we as conservatives now are fighting against. And I look, there's no better place to see that in action than right here in Tennessee. It's precisely how you can have a supermajority Republican legislature. We have 132 members of the legislature here in Tennessee. For example, in the House, that's 99 state representatives. Well, 75 of those 99 are Republicans. And so, when you look at that, you think, well, gosh, we should be passing every bit of the most conservative pieces of legislation that we can. But that never happens. It never happens at the state level, and it doesn't happen at the federal level.
Let me ask you about that real quick, because at the federal level, people can understand, okay, you've got a very strong Democrat Party that's kind of controlled by these globalists that are out there, and the Republicans are fighting them at some level. But then again, there's the Mitt Romneys and the Liz Cheneys and, those who are just reaching across the aisle, and they continue to move further left. Whereas here, you don't have a really strong Democrat Party in Tennessee. So you've got the establishment class of officials, I think, like you just mentioned, and then you've got some I'd call them freedom fighters that are fewer and further between that are kind of pulling back against them. But what is driving this establishment class who they don't really have to shake hands with the other side of the aisle? Why are they going that way?
Well, it's power and influence. I mean, what I was speaking to federally is I'm hearkening back to those times whenever the Republican Party is in control of the presidency and both houses of Congress, right? I mean, you can go back in history and look at times, even again at the federal level, when the Republican Party has complete and total control,
Right.
and you walk out of those times and think, well, gosh, well, why didn't we reduce the debt? Why did we raise the debt ceiling? Why, all those different
Right.
things that we continue to fight. So you see the same thing here in Tennessee with the supermajority. I'll give you a great example of the supermajority deal. What just happened in Congress with the 20 members of the House Freedom Caucus at the beginning of session, whenever they stood against the appointment of Kevin McCarthy and used that little bit of power they had as a bargaining chip to sort of change the rules of the House, to give conservatives a little bit more sway. Well, that would have never happened. This is an interesting point to make. Had there actually been a red wave in the general election in 2022,
Yeah.
Kevin McCarthy would have been appointed immediately. Conservatives would have been told to sit down and shut up and answer when spoken to. Those 20 members of Congress would have not had the ability for their voices to really matter, because the red wave would have supplied the necessary number of establishment players to simply push through whatever they wanted to do. And so that is sort of the issue. The supermajority, to some degree here in Tennessee, actually works against us whenever you only have 10 or 12 really strong, principled conservatives in the legislature that are willing to stand on principle. They don't have the kind of voice and the power that. So we're hoping that's what we're working on. 2024 is coming. We're always working on getting air cover, getting more support in the legislature to those conservative voices. So we'll see what happens in 24.
Absolutely. Do you feel, and I'll just throw out a couple names here that you bring up often, that, Jack Johnson and Governor Bill Lee, both important figures in Tennessee politics. Do you feel
Yeah,
that they're both part of that uniparty? I mean, would you just say flat out they're in the uniparty establishment?
without question,
Okay.
without question. And look, I mean, no slight to Jack, but you can't near 20 years in the same seat and not be part of the establishment. I mean, there's a point in time, I think, where just as men and women running for elected office, we should have the self-awareness to think, maybe I'm done here. Maybe I've gone beyond the pale on what elected representation is supposed to look like. I'm always against the career politician aspect of politics, and I think we all should be. It's human nature at that point to sort of get ingrained in what you're doing up at the Capitol. So that the need to change your leadership on a regular basis is a very human need. It's not a slight on any one individual. I think that's just a necessary part of a republic.
Yeah. Well, it even came up here locally in Williamson County last night. The head of the election commission, I believe, has been in that unelected position for 26 years.
It's a problem.
And once again, going against what the majority of the people at that meeting, actually at both meetings, the one they had in May as well, to get rid of these. Actually, they wanted to purchase the ES&S machines, and it got voted down. So then they repackage it, bring it back, and it's the same thing, just with another $50,000 efficacy test to be done on paper ballots. But yeah, the term limit thing definitely needs to happen. I want to drive the point home real quick about the establishment uniparty, kind of guys that we're talking about here. You've called it, you said we're beyond left and right. This is about good and evil at this point. Now, Bill Lee went to Grace Chapel with me. I used to go to Grace Chapel a while back, and I just don't understand, Gary, how these guys at that level don't actually know what they're doing at this point. I mean, do they not see the winds of culture and how dark it's getting out there outside of Tennessee and think, oh, wait, if I'm just playing along with this and going along to get along, I'm actually embracing or supporting evil? I mean, are they not seeing that?
Yeah, I'm sure I mean, gosh, that's a wide and varied question. There's several answers one could give, but certainly, and I think it's sort of a symptom here in Tennessee. I've traveled the state from Memphis to Bristol, and there are a lot of folks that are awakened to what is happening globally and willing to put up a fight. But I'll tell you, when you look at the Republican Party in general, and I don't know if it's a Southern thing or just a Tennessee thing, but the general sentiment sometimes can be, well, this is Tennessee. Everything's just great in Tennessee. I know his daddy and I know his cousins, and they're just, these are just good people. I go to church with them, and they're looking out for our best interest. They're just good Christian people. And what I would say to that is, I don't know necessarily that a lot of these people are evil or have malicious intent, but I would say there are a lot of nice Christian, well-intentioned people that ought not to be in leadership. That's just
right. Yeah.
That is for me personally, that is not necessarily a qualifying factor of what will make you a good governor or a good legislator. I think we really need people that understand the issues and are and it's not just an understanding and a willingness to vote on the issues. It's a willingness to really speak out and fight on the issues, because that's that we are fighting a godless. It requires some fight.
Hey Gary, back up. For some reason, this thing cut out on me here. Hold on just a moment. I'm not sure why it did that. It got real slow. We'll let it clear up here a second. Could you go back like one sentence? I'll edit that out.
A little blurry for some reason.
Yeah, I don't know why. Suddenly we lost some signal strength. This is good enough for now. If you just go back one sentence, I'll splice it together.
Am I good?
Yeah, anytime. You're good.
I just don't know that in Tennessee, oftentimes on this side of the aisle, that you really see that fight that's necessary to fight against what honestly is a godless agenda.
Which state, Gary, if you could pick one, which state is standing up the strongest?
Oh, I don't know that any state's standing up the strongest. I mean, certainly people are excited about Florida, and look, deservedly so. Ron DeSantis has been very vocal about some of these agendas. I mean, I can think back to whenever they came out with the COVID shot for 5-year-olds and under for babies, right? I mean, Florida, in that moment, the interesting thing was, and I'm not just going to pick on Tennessee, because 49 of 50 states at that time made an order, put a contract in with Big Pharma for these shots in these state departments of health. Florida was the only one that said no. Their Surgeon General in the state of Florida not only did not purchase those shots for their Department of Health, but was very public in saying, we're not giving these shots to kids here in the state of Florida. So look, it's those types of things that I've really appreciated about Florida. I'm not saying they've done everything right, but boy, there are some key moments where they've been very vocal on just telling the truth, and that oftentimes we don't get that here in Tennessee.
Yeah. When I look at what Ron DeSantis has done in Florida, generally speaking, over the last 2 to 3 years, people say, oh, what a phenomenal leader. A lot of people will say that, right? And he's made these great decisions. It's really, he's just done the common sense thing. It's like things that people would have thought, well, that's not what necessarily a great leader does. That's just what a smart, average person would do, looking at the facts. And we're just in such a weird time where taking a stand for just basic, what's good versus evil, just standing on good things is just this huge act of like bravery or something. It's weird. It's a weird time. What about locally here? What do you feel, Gary, are some issues that people need to be paying attention to? I know there's 3 or 4 that you've been discussing. Yeah,
well, clearly, I mean, top of the list right now is the governor's push for these red flag laws. And, it's important to note that there's still an opportunity to call this thing off. The governor has not officially drafted a proclamation that will call for the special session on August 21st. He's simply publicly hinted that he will do so. So that that ship technically has not sailed for the governor to call this off, and I know legislators across the state are calling for the governor to put this effort to bed. And look, it's clear. There was a poll. I recently put this in our email this week. There was a poll that came out that shows overwhelmingly that Tennesseans do not support red flag laws. And in fact, this poll was interesting because the way they did it, they asked the question, do you support, some type of red flag law? And there was a majority of support for that effort. However, when it was clarified in the poll that the proposed red flag legislation would abrogate due process rights and infringe upon the Second Amendment, the approval of the red flag laws dropped by like 40%, right? So, yeah. The key point there to recognize is, in general, do people want to get guns out of the hands of dangerous people? Yes, if we could realistically do that, that would be great. The problem is we can't realistically do that on a broad basis without infringing upon our constitutionally secured rights and due process. And it's important that we protect those things. So yeah, that's definitely, the top of the list here. As always, we're looking at election integrity. We had, you mentioned this vote earlier that we had here in Williamson County. Look, the thing that I think a lot of people need to understand about our elections, there is not one person. I don't think many people in Tennessee know this. There's not one person from Secretary of State on down to your county elections administrator that is accountable to or elected by the voters of Tennessee. Our Secretary of State, unlike most states, is appointed by the legislature. The state elections coordinator is appointed by the state legislature, actually appointed by the Secretary of State. The state election commission is appointed by the state legislature, and all the way down to the county level officials. These are all appointed officials, appointed by the legislature, which means what? That means everyone that administrates an election here in the state of Tennessee is accountable to and subject to the people currently elected in office.
Doesn't sound like a conflict of interest to me.
No, not at all. But that's the fact of the matter here. So I think a lot of people need to understand that first and foremost. And secondly, when we're talking about county elections, it's also important to note the limitations of what we can actually do here at the county level. The elections commission, even at the county, the way the line of authority is drawn is a state agency. So even your county election commission takes cues from the state election commission. Our education system works the same way. The county commission only approves funding to our schools and to our election commission. But they do not approve and have no authority over our school curriculum and in terms of our elections, over whether or not we're using machines or paper ballots. Those are decisions that stem directly from state authority. So we've been working at the state level to change that. We've for the last two sessions now, we've had bills that would have allowed counties to have a process to secure hand-marked, serialized, watermarked, hologrammed paper ballots. And those measures continue to fail at the states, at the state level. And so until we can really secure that at the state level, we're flailing here in the county. And there's a little bit we can grovel about in terms of what the county commission can fund. But even at that, understand that the county's only funding about 10% of those activities. The lion's share of that funding is coming from the state, and they're going to fund it, regardless if the people want it or not. That's some of the nuts and bolts of the issues that we face. They're big problems, but we need men and women in the legislature at the state level willing to address these problems.
I'll let you go in just a minute, but you brought up education, and for those who didn't hear the news or whatever, maybe a month or two ago when Penny Schwinn left the position, and I believe it was another appointee that was by Bill Lee that was put in place as is it the director of education in Tennessee? Is that the title?
Commissioner of Education. Yeah.
Commissioner of Education. So, catch us up to speed on who this person is, what they're about, and your general feeling about this.
Yeah, look, I believe her name is Lizette Reynolds Gonzalez. I think I might have gotten those last two names mixed up. I can't recall. But it's one and the same. I mean, to be honest, this is Penny Schwinn 2.0. You look back at her history. She comes from Jeb Bush's. She comes from. Penny Schwinn was Chiefs for Change, which was an extension of Jeb Bush's Foundation for Excellence in Education. And Lizette Reynolds, is our new commissioner, was actually the vice president of public policy for the Foundation for Excellence in Education. So they're coming through the same pipeline. They have the same drive to promulgate social emotional learning throughout our education system, which we know. I've heard it described as the train tracks for BLM, for CRT,
100%.
for the LGBT agenda. So, nothing's changed. And again, you have to wonder, as we sort of talked about earlier, how is it that a man like Governor Bill Lee, because this is, by the way, Tennesseans need to know, there's no one else making this decision. The governor of this state has the sole authority to hire and fire every commissioner of the state of Tennessee. So when you talk about who runs these administrative departments, these are decisions made by the governor. And so why would it be that our Christian conservative governor while the legislature is passing laws, quote unquote, banning CRT, we have a governor who is appointing commissioners of education who have a long track record in history of supporting CRT and social emotional learning. So round and round we go. Nothing seems to be changing here in Tennessee. We need a change in leadership at the very highest level.
100% agreed. Is for the average citizen. I'll let this be your final word. What will you say as advice to your average citizen who sees this going on, wants to get involved? What should they be doing?
Yeah, it's great. We have to continue sending emails and calling our legislators during legislative session, advocating for policy. I mean, we can't ever stop doing those things. But men and women in this state, moms and dads, business owners, whoever you are, need to be considering running for office. We have to get back to the idea of self-governance. And that means that we don't shirk that responsibility off to someone else, off to some elected elite class of individual. This is the everyday Tennessean that ought to be considering, what's my role when it comes to local politics, school boards, county commissions, and the legislature, and governor, quite frankly. And I would just say this: I think a lot of folks get concerned, and it's don't get me wrong, it's a real concern over how much money it takes to run for office in today's political world, and it does take money. I will just say, though, I think it takes a lot less money than you would think. There's a point of diminishing returns on how much some schmuck might spend.
Well, how much did you spend compared to Jack Johnson's campaign?
Yeah, so I was outspent 5-1.
Like lost by 1%?
Yeah, right. I'm 2%. It's 51-49, roughly.
Okay.
So, and I would say I would just say statistically, if I were to run again, Jack couldn't spend enough money, to overcome that disparity. When you're already 5-1 and you're barely breaking 50% of the vote. So I think my race was an indicator for that, but I hope that encourages people. Don't short yourself. This game is not all about money. We have a large group of grassroots conservatives that are willing to go out and support good candidates and knock on doors and make phone calls and show up in the primaries. And I would just close by saying that's really the biggest thing that needs to change is voter turnout. Look, even in a hotly contested race like we had here in Williamson County, I believe at the end of the day, voter turnout in the primary was roughly 13 or 14%. On the high side, I believe.
Wow.
So that has to change. Look, if people are not going to show up and vote in the primaries, we can't win. Elections in Tennessee, okay, elections happen in the primary. The conservative candidate is going to win or lose in the primary, not in November.
Right.
By the time November rolls around and you show up to vote in the general, the major work has already been done. The decision has already been made, and especially in the county, in Williamson, where the Democrat is never going to breach about 35% of the vote right now. You have to understand the election has already happened in the Republican primary. So,
right.
In a county like Williamson, if you're not voting in the Republican primary, you're not voting. All right.
That makes sense.
And that has to be understood.
Yeah, especially in terms of the whole Uniparty thing. By the time November rolls around, you probably got either establishment or deeper establishment if you hadn't got that freedom fighter in there back in the primaries. So
right.
That's great advice, Gary. Man, thank you for coming on today. And it's always good to brush up on what's going on locally because, man, this is the only place we can make a change.
Yeah, well, thanks for staying current and being in the fight for sure, and I appreciate all you do, man.
All right, Gary. Talk to you soon, my friend.
You know, the timing of this Warrior program for me couldn't have been more spot on. And I love the name that Jeremy calls it, the Warrior Mind, Body, and Soul, because it really encompasses all of those things. You know, from the mind standpoint, one of the things I love is that I'm surrounded by like-minded men who love the Lord, men who want to be good leaders, not only in their home, but also in the community for which they live, and who are willing to step up to the plate and say, hey, I want to take a place and be a voice and be that man in my community and for my family. I love the body part because getting in shape is so important. I felt sluggish for a while, and so since I've been in this program, it's like my mind's gotten more clear, my body is changing, I'm losing weight, and I feel good, I feel better about myself, and I've got more energy. And so I love the aspect of this. And the workout program is something that is absolutely doable, which is one of the things I struggled with other programs, because going to the gym, just the timing of it. But this has been phenomenal, the way Jeremy lays out these programs. And then the soul part of it. It has really challenged me and pushed me in my relationship with God. And there's been an awakening of things that I've really kind of been asleep to, that I don't need to be asleep to as a godly man. There's things I need to grow in, and so this has really challenged me and pushed me and been a program that has really set me on a track that at this season in my life I've never been on, but I'm grateful to be on it, and I feel empowered. And like I said, I've got like-minded men there's some competition, so it's fun, and they're pushing me and I'm pushing them, and it couldn't be better. So if you are giving this any thought, don't give it any more thought. Embrace it. Do